Awesome, awesome. And as you mentioned about single family and then moving on to multifamily, sorry, I know you got a bunch of questions, Ava, jumping in, but I don't want to lose my track of thought here. But as you mentioned about single family, moving on to multifamily, kind of tell us about that journey. And you talked about fear and anxiety that exists, looking at, being used to doing fix and flips on a single family. I'm not saying that you did, but I'm just assuming, and then looking at a 100-unit apartment building where there is multi-tenanted, there's property management involved, there's taxes, fees, bunch of different items. So tell me how that transition works. How do you work around the anxiety that exists, the fear of looking at such a great asset and the concept of syndicating that asset?
Yeah, well, a couple things. So I did do flips. I did do buy and hold. The first 5 of my properties were technically just buy and hold. I buy them, 2008, put a couple bucks down. In US, we have first time homeowners. So FHA, I think I put like $3,000 down on my first house. We lived there. And instead of selling it, I moved to the next one and rented out the first. And every time we'd buy another property, I would use this FHA kind of, this is my house, my primary residence, buy a new one, rent the one behind me, buy a new one, rent the one behind me. So I never got rid of my equity in it. It meant it was like a forced savings mechanism, which really helped me transition to commercial real estate, because every time I had a property that I rented, there was equity in it, cash flow positive, and I got the experience of, being a landlord. And then it helped me a little bit later down the road, because when I was trying to transition, I had a little bit of cash flow. I could refinance some of these properties. Had a little bit of, I sold a couple, had some money in the bank, in cash reserves, and kind of go do the next one. But the fear, the anxiety, the kind of things, it stumped me. It stopped me from moving forward and buying apartment buildings for 10 years. So if there's anybody that's listening that just kind of has the fear, it's like, yes, I felt it. I read many investors that I talked to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I did the same. Robert Kiyosaki book, Purple and Yellow book. The second book I read was like immediately after the ABCs of Real Estate Investing. It was Ken McElroy, another Purple and Yellow book, a trusted advisor book. And so I read it, and I was thinking ABCs of Real Estate. Oh, this is going to show me how to buy a house. Well, really, they showed you how to buy an apartment building, and they walk through the numbers, tell you about the team, tell you about the market. Here's how to analyze. Here's how to put an offer on a property. Here's how to raise capital, like start to finish. It's a really good, solid read. And I then, this was 26, I read that book, and I get into a fearful state and say, there's no way you can do that. Abel, you're like a young kid. You don't have any money. There's no way you can raise any capital. Get real is the lie that I told myself. And that's when I bought the first single family house instead of an apartment complex. So I bought those houses over and over and over again for 10 years. And, the internal barrier was myself getting out of my own head, my own limiting belief, the own factor that, I can do that. And it took me like coaches, it took me mentors, it took me a lot of education. I dropped a lot of, good money and attending a bunch of conferences and seminars and things like that to where I could finally say like, yes, like you can do this. And that, and turned into a passive investor. I got in, one deal. I moved 401k to an IRA. I did the second deal, the same one, 401k to an IRA. So we got into 400 doors passively. My wife got into a third deal on her own, 282 doors. And so we're both investing. It's really cool. We could rap about it and have fun, because she would help. She's my strategy. She's my strategy partner, 100%. She helps me with like the really big decisions, and I'm like an executor. So anyways, we go do this, and we're like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to take 50K every 5 years. It'll double. It'll turn into 100. And if I can plant as many of these 50K seeds, in 5 years, it'll be 100. In 10 years, it'll be 200. In 15 years, it'll be 400. In 20 years, we're close to retire. It'll be like $800,000. And that's one seed.